Welcome to the Incred podcast.
Today, what we're discussing is especially pertaining to pursuing education in the UK. So joining us today for that is Namita Mehta. She's the president at the Red Pen, a leading education consulting agency. At the Red Pen, Namita assists students in planning their educational journey and specializes in training applicants for the interview process at universities of Oxford and Cambridge. Namita has spoken at several panels for leading universities and has also been featured in leading publications like Midday, ET Panache, Hindustan Times, and many more. So we're very excited to have you here with us. Namita, welcome.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. Very excited to be here this evening.
Great. So I am directly going to jump at the questions. I was reading somewhere that UK actually has the third largest, Indians constitute the third largest group of international students in the UK. So because of the recent COVID times that we've been in, has this trend changed because of that?
So that's a great question, Bhavna. In fact, the number of students that have been applying to the UK has been increasing multiple fold every year. I mean, according to data that I looked at in 2018, around 19,000 applicants from India applied. In 2019, it more than doubled to 30,000. And in 2020, there were 56,000 applications to the UK from India. So the number of applications to the UK skyrocketed for several reasons. One is the reintroduction of the 2-year work visa that happened a couple of years ago. So that means that any student at the undergrad or the postgrad level that graduate with a degree in the UK can stay on in the United Kingdom and work for up to 2 years after they graduate, which is great news. Other reasons include things like, the undergraduate degrees in the UK are 3 years. Majority of them are 3 years compared to 4 years in the US or Canada. The cost compared to the US is also, significantly less, especially with the 3 and 4 year thing, with the 3 and 4 year degree duration. And then the proximity to India is also very important, right? I mean, it's an overnight flight to London Heathrow versus the US can be pretty long, can be, a much further distance away. So families sometimes prefer their children to be closer to India. And the other thing to keep in mind also, with the UK is that students who know what they want to do, the UK is a fantastic destination because you go there, you study that major, you study that subject, and there's no need for you to necessarily dabble in subjects or topics that you don't want to study. So the UK is a very focused, academic curriculum like India, and students who know what they want to do, the UK is a fantastic place to go to. So parents and families are casting a wider net when it comes to international admissions, and certainly the COVID situation has benefited UK universities.
In your opinion, would it be better to start undergrad in the UK itself, or it's something that's more suitable for a postgrad sort of course?
So that really depends on you as an individual. It depends on what your long-term goals are. It depends on your financial ability, financial status as well. Degrees in the UK, though cheaper than maybe the US and Canada, are still pretty expensive. And we'll talk about scholarships and financial aid later on, but they're not that. There aren't that many scholarships available for international students. So the ticket price is pretty high. And then the living costs are really high, are also up there. I mean, I know we're going to be speaking about that a little later. So it really depends on what your goal is. Again, like if you really know what you want to study, you've done your research into the universities and you can afford it, going to the UK is definitely, I would suggest it. But if you're someone who's really unsure, you want to dabble in different subjects, like if you have an interest in, say, history and philosophy, or you like math and you like, reading, the opportunity for you to do a lot of combined courses is not as much as, say, other destinations. And also, a lot of families have budgeted for their child to go away for their postgrad degree and not necessarily for their undergrad degree. So taking the cost into consideration is also very important.
So moving on to the question, Namita, you mentioned about knowing what you want, but in general, what are the courses that UK is specifically known for?
That's a great question, Bhavna. So the courses, again, a lot of Indian students apply for engineering, medicine, law, the social sciences, English literature. I mean, it's across the board. It really depends on your interest, and you really have the opportunity in the UK to delve into that subject. You go really in depth in your 3 years there. I studied molecular and cellular biochemistry, and I had modules in organic chemistry, biological chemistry, biophysics, and you really are able to go really, really deep in. But I would say that, law and medicine are very popular subjects that Indian students look at, because you can study law or medicine at the undergrad level in the US. They're considered postgrad degrees, whereas law and medicine you can study as undergrad degrees in the UK. Also, the Commonwealth law is very similar to what we practice in India versus the law that exists in the US. So a lot of students from India like to look at that. And then there's also a really famous program that a lot of students from India look at, which is called PPE, Politics, Philosophy, and Economics. And it's that combination degree that Oxford offers that as a course, as a major, and it is a very popular course that undergrad students look at, because it's really a combination of the social sciences, and they have some fantastic modules that they're teaching.
Should students consider the ROI factor when choosing a university, or should they really follow the name and the prestige of the university and then make a pick?
So, Bhavna, when we talk about the ROI of a university, it really depends on the student. Like, what does ROI mean to you? Right? What is the return of investment to you? Is the ROI that I end up getting a very high paid job at the end so that I can end up, paying for the education that I paid for, or pay my parents back, or pay the loan that I took back? Is that my ROI? Is my ROI going to the UK and networking so that I can be an entrepreneur and, create my own business there? Is the ROI genuinely like, I know I want to study astrophysics, and this is a stepping stone to then get into a better program for my master's and then go into academia? So what does an ROI mean to you? And I think that's what parents and students need to ask themselves when they think about, rank of a university or which university should I attend. Now, in general, what I've seen is that, the UK universities offer fantastic education. I mean, you really are learning from top professors, but you have to be independent about it. No one's going to force you to go to class. No one's going to check up on you. No one's going to, give you a GPA or make sure that you're studying. But you really have to be independent. And if you kind of manage your time well, there's so many other opportunities that a UK university can give you. And if you take advantage of that, I think the ROI can be very much significantly higher than just going there and studying. And what I'm talking about is, getting involved in university life, whether you want to work, whether you want to do an internship, whether you want to do a studentship with a professor, whether you want to utilize the summers to visit Europe or see the rest of the UK, getting involved in extracurricular activities that you might not have ever had the opportunity to try in high school. They really give you a platform to do all of that. And if you take advantage of all those resources that are available, the ROI can be huge. Well, is huge rather.
That's great. So with so many students actually applying to the UK, and UK has some really fabulous universities, are there any suggestions, any tips you can give as to how students can start preparing for this earlier?
Yes. So, the UK education system mimics that of India. Okay. We used to be a British colony, and we've imbibed their education system. The UK education system, really puts academia at the forefront. They want to make sure that you're going to be able to cope with the academic rigor in their institution. So that is the main criteria that they look at. In fact, at the undergrad level, no matter what curriculum you're doing and what course or major you want to do, every university website will list down what minimum data point, what minimum academics you need to have to be eligible to apply. So I'm sure Palak will talk about this a little later, but say if I wanted to study economics at LSE and I was in the IB program as a high school student, I need to have a predicted of 40 points in the IB with a 7 in higher level math. Now, if my academic caliber is that high, then I should go ahead and apply. So that's the first thing that you need to look at. In addition to that, and I would recommend students to do extracurricular activities around the major that they want to apply in. Because when you apply to UK universities at the undergrad level, you write something called a personal statement. That's a 4,000 character statement to tell the universities why you want to study that subject or that course at the university. And this personal statement is seen by all the 5 colleges you apply to. So you cannot write a separate personal statement for different universities. You apply through one platform. So to do that, you want to be able to demonstrate that you've done work or you've explored that subject outside of the class, outside of high school. So for example, say if I'm applying for medicine, you cannot just say that I'm very good at bio and chemistry in school and my aunt had cancer and I want to go to be a doctor. You have to be able to show that you have other skills, that you have, that you've developed empathy. You might have worked in an old age home. You might have shadowed a doctor. You might have done some science research outside the classroom. So those extracurricular activities related to medicine is what they're going to look for. You might even be an amazing tennis player, right? And you might want to be a doctor, but UK universities don't put as much emphasis on extracurricular activities outside of your subject area.
Okay, so basically having these extracurricular activities, relevant ones, really is a big plus.
Absolutely.
That's very interesting. So moving on to the expenses, right?
Yes.
What are the kind of expenses that one can expect once they move abroad in the UK?
Okay, perfect. So yeah, okay, the UK. So I mean, if we look at the average price of an undergrad degree in the UK, it can vary from £8,000 all the way to £30,000. Medicine is, sometimes even more expensive than that. At the postgrad level, it's between £12,000 to £31,000. And then, when it comes to living costs, I would say approximately £1,000 to £1,250 a month is what you need to look at, and that includes your rent, your food, your transportation, and any leisure activities that you want to participate in. So those are the costs that you're looking at. One more thing I want to say is that living in London is significantly more expensive than living anywhere outside of the UK. What I paid it was at Oxford, and what I paid per rent per month is what my brother paid in London per week. So living in London is expensive. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And so how do you suggest students go about this? Can they work part-time? Do universities support that?
Absolutely. During term time, students are allowed to work for 20 hours a week. And during the holidays, they can work full-time. You're allowed to do that.
Oh, that's great. And what's the kind of minimum wage one can expect to earn out there?
So I'm not sure at the top of my head, but it's around, I'd say, £8. Maybe Palak can help me here.
Okay. All right. I'll be sure to ask her that question once I understand that. Great. Now coming to the point of actually taking up a loan, because many students actually do take up a loan to aid their expenses. Is that something that you would advise? Does that ease the burden?
100%, Bhavna, I really would, because this is a one-off experience. When you go to university, you don't necessarily want to be stifled because, or you don't want to not take up an opportunity because you don't have the money. Or you don't have the resources at that point in time, but that time is never going to come back. So taking a loan, and if you have a good interest rate, I really do recommend it, because there's so many opportunities, so many things to do as a university student. You can probably earn that money after you graduate, but you might not have the time to do those things, right? At university, you don't want to take advantage of the resources available, and even the opportunity to travel, the opportunity to do research opportunities, which sometimes do require you to have some kind of a stipend above and beyond what what you're paying at university. So I do think that taking a loan is important, but again, at the same time, I think students have to be very wise about spending that money, thinking about what their priorities are. I mean, obviously not just going to the high street and going shopping, but really using that money to take advantage and getting an educational experience that they're eventually going to be proud of and going to help them really grow in their careers in the future.
That is so true. And Namita, I believe you've been doing this for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
Assisting students. How many years has it been for you?
Over 12 years now. Over 12 years. Yeah.
So in all these years, what are some of the challenges that you've seen that are quite common amongst these students, and how do you help them overcome these?
So, going to the UK, you're pretty much thrown in the deep end. I want to say that, like, the minute you hit university, you attend your lectures, you have your classes, you might have interactions with professors, but you really have to be independent and you really have to be motivated. In most UK universities, it's the exams that matter. It's the exams that are going to make up your degree. So you really have to stay motivated throughout the year to continue to do well. And that can sometimes be a challenge because high schools, they prod you if you haven't responded, or they make sure that you're kind of staying on track. So just being independent and managing your time is sometimes a challenge that I see first-year students have at university. Of course, there's homesickness. Many students have never lived away from home and they're going for the first time. And sometimes that can be a little overwhelming when you're in a new place, and you really sometimes don't know how to manage your time, or you're overwhelmed. You don't know how to make friends. But I think students end up overcoming that. And the other thing is that at the postgrad levels, most of the master's programs in the UK are only 1 year. So you really have to settle down quickly and kind of move on before you know it, that year is just going to be over. So those are some of the challenges that students face.
And what are the kind of things that one needs to be prepared for in order to start the application process? I've heard it's quite a lengthy one. So if you could just sort of throw some light on that.
Sure. So when it comes to the application process, I think it's relatively straightforward at the undergrad level, maybe not so at the master's because there's a lot more research and you're looking at niche programs. But at the undergrad level, it's relatively straightforward. You apply through a centralized system called UCAS, like I mentioned, and it's 5 universities. And it's pretty black and white. Like I said, they have these minimum entry requirements. So first of all, you need to make sure that you match their academic requirements. And even in the UK, for each major that you want to study at each university, they actually tell you what you're going to be studying in the first year, what you're going to be studying in the second year, what you're going to be studying in the fourth year. So going through that and understanding how your course is structured is very important. I mean, that'll help you choose which universities you want. I also think that it's important to think about, whether you want to be in a real campus university or whether you want to be in London, right? I mean, in London, the universities are part of the city. It's not like a gated campus. And as you kind of move away from London, these campuses, sometimes there's university towns, sometimes they are gated campuses. So you have to kind of understand what you're looking for, and doing research, really looking in depth at these universities and what they have to offer, and especially the program that you want to study is very important.
Okay. And many students actually do ask us about this, and it's something that's on everyone's mind. It's coming to the scholarships. What are the kind of scholarship opportunities that are available for Indian students?
So to be perfectly honest, in the UK, there aren't many scholarship opportunities available. I mean, there are these very specific awards that students can apply to. Like, I'll give you a couple of examples. There is, for example, the UCL has a program called the UPC Progression Scholarship that is like a 5,000 per year scholarship. Nottingham offers the South Asia Undergraduate Excellence Award for £7,000. Warwick Undergraduate Excellence Scholarship for 250 50 students are awarded that, and it's $2,000 off the full tuition fee. So it's not a significant amount, Bhavna, but there are a few scholarship opportunities available. But it's not like the US where there's an opportunity for you to apply for need-based aid. They don't have that in the UK, especially for international students, right? Because you might want to access those universities, and it's really going to be a stepping stone to your future career. And then having the opportunity to take a loan will be very, very useful.
Plus, the repayment starts once these students start working, so the pressure is never there from day one. So that's a good thing. Great. Thanks, Namita. I think these answers have been truly insightful. Before I call on Palak, are there any parting words, any sort of advice that you wished your younger self would have received that you would want to give to others?
Two pieces of advice, parting advice. One is know what you want to study at the undergrad level, because you really will not be able to change. And second is just take advantage of all the resources and the opportunities you have at your university and other universities too in the UK when you go there.
Perfect. Thank you, Namita. I think that really helps a lot. So we'll now actually move on to our second guest. Thanks, Namita. Thanks for your time. Okay, I hope everyone is liking the session so far. Now we'll move on to our second guest for today. Her name is Miss Palak Behel. She works as an international recruitment officer for the King's College in London. She has more than 8 years work experience in the education sector, including outreach and academics as an assistant professor in marketing. She is a global career counselor, and in the course of her work, she has traveled across the country to interact with students across 100 schools as well as colleges and help them realize their educational aspirations. So, Palak, we're glad to have you on board. Welcome.
Thank you, Bhavna, for the introduction, and thank you for having me. Good evening,
Great.
everyone.
All right, Palak. So King's College is definitely, as we all know, it's one of the most sought after universities in the UK. Can you share a quick overview of the application process to the university?
Right. So, as Namita highlighted, for undergrad, pretty much in the UK, almost, Russell Group and beyond universities consider the UCAS. So that's a centralized application system. And a lot of students don't really know this probably that UCAS is not just application, but it also has a lot of useful resources that will help you with your application. So, but the personal statement, researching about the college, information about college. So all of those are there. So you have to apply through the UCAS, and at the undergrad, you will have 5 choices and one application. Also, I'm just trying to, ask some of the, answer some of the follow-up questions that generally pop up. So these 5 choices can be 5 different courses at the same university, or, 5 different options at 5 different universities. So that's generally a question that pops up with students. So with undergrad, it's through UCAS, and with postgrad, it's directly, at least for King's, and most of the universities, it's directly through their own application portal that's on the website.
Okay. And I'm asking this with respect to King's College specifically. Is there a ratio that the university maintains? Like, what is that ratio for foreign students?
The published ratio, which is in stats or numbers, except medicine, we don't really have a fixed ratio for international students. All of these applications are judged holistically and equally, irrespective of nationality and domicile. But for application for medicines, we have just 30 seats for international students. That's beyond UK. So that's really, really competitive. But other than that, there is no such ratio there. But also a lot of universities keep this in mind to have like a heterogeneous mix inside the classroom that of course fosters more learning. So those are some passive factors that also play a role, but with published numbers, it's just that.
Okay. And I'm sure King's College must be receiving applications in like the thousands, lakhs. So what are some of the criteria that your university considers in order to pick international students?
Just meeting the entry requirements as listed on the website is just honestly a prerequisite, because the kind of quality applications that we receive, pretty much everybody will and not quote unquote, but pretty much everybody will meet those entry requirements that are with marks or grades. So putting a very, very high quality personal statement becomes really, really important for a good application, because most of the programs at King specifically, and some other universities as well, they don't really have an interview. So your personal statement, which is those 4,000 characters, are your best shot to show that you are a right fit. So a lot of students know that personal statement is important, etc., but they don't really know the context of why it's important. Is basically the university wants to check that you are a right fit or not, right? So, and I tell this to students a lot, the admissions team finds no joy in rejecting applications, right? They just reject in the sense, irrespective if you're meeting your minimum grade requirement, is that they don't really find you a correct fit. So that becomes really important. So of course, LORs, everything is important. Now, a lot of students ask this as a pop-up question, that what component is more important than the other? Honestly, your applications are judged holistically, and everything is important. But I would say the prerequisite is, of course, to meet the minimum entry requirement scores. But other than that, everything forms an important component to judge your applications holistically. I've seen students who met their minimum grades but have not been offered a place, or probably their classmate had 3% above than what they had, but still, the one who had a lesser percentage, of course, meeting the entry requirements got through because probably the person's statement is a deal breaker in a lot of applications.
Are there any courses where applications from foreign foreign students are the highest? Ones that are most
From India, we have a lot of applications for business, for law, psychology, economics, PPE, philosophy is a big component. We will not have as much applications for, say, nursing, because these are all country specific things. But in general, I mean, this year specifically, when we were analyzing, when I quoted the 66,000 applications figures, the top three courses for those applications were law, biomedical sciences, and business there. So that's generally more popular subjects than the others.
Okay. And when it comes to scholarships, are there any that are specific to your university?
UK is not very, very scholarship focused as a destination, if you're looking at one. But and King's also in particular is not very generous with scholarships, and specifically not at the undergrad level. So, but however, having said that, there are a few scholarships each year and they change each year. So the website starts updating in about, say, November or December, and it's updated as late as, say, June, July. So you can keep an eye out and check. But if you're looking for UK as a destination, check the British Council website, do a thorough Google's research. Sometimes companies like HSBC will have a scholarship. So you will have to be thorough with your Google search. And it's not like US where it's all published on college website to kind of, give a scholarship on a plate. That's not the case with UK. And not with King specifically. It's not very generous with scholarships specifically at undergrad.
Okay. And what about the, as Namita mentioned, that students can work part-time. So what's the limit like? I'm guessing
So
it's uniform across.
Yeah, so it's based on your visa actually. So that's why it's supposed to be uniform. So it's 20 hours during term time and full-time others, and full-time is 40 hours. So and with the minimum wage. So there are different ways to have part-time experience, right? You can work in restaurants, departmental stores, bars, and even at the university. So at the university, generally you are paid a little higher than the normal restaurant charges, I would say. So it starts from about, say, £8. Generally, restaurants have about £8, etc. Some, of course, might have more, but at university, with Kings, it's about 10 to 11 pounds an hour. So that's there, and of course, there are various departments that you can work with, except the examination department for obvious reasons. But you can become a student ambassador and work with the university. So there are various ways to do that. However, I strongly tell students to first be mindful of balancing your time, because your first motive there is to go and study and not probably earn money. Because whenever a student is leaving their house, everybody, all their relatives, all friends, all seniors, everybody will have different perspectives, so much advice to share. Now it's on each individual to take what suits them. And how some students, they find the transition very, very easy to, probably because they've visited London so many times. So, and some families are etc. But for some students, it might not be as easy because they've been really, raised in a pampered environment, which generally Indians are, right? So and I always tell students, don't take this pressure. It's everybody's personal journey. It's not that if your friend's managing to work 10 hours a week, you will also have to do it. But on a macro perspective, all of these things really add to your exposure. It's really you learn balancing, team management, all of those skills are also there. So, but suit yourself, and studying is always your first priority, I would say.
That's true. So it's in fact very encouraging that you mentioned that the university pays higher for these jobs. So that's actually quite encouraging. My last question to you before we move on to the questions. Since you've had such a long career, what would be like your top 5 tips to students who are seeking admission in King's College, and in general also, that they should be very mindful of?
Right. So I think research is really important. And whenever I'm interacting with any student, I emphasize at least 10 times in an hour that, starting early is really important because that has various advantages. One, you do your research properly. I tell students to not just run behind course names, right? So if you want to do business, just go to the university website, see what's taught under these modules, because two universities or five universities might offer the same business course as a name, but what they actually teach under business might be similar or different, right? So that's really important. Don't just run behind course names, or if your friend's doing business, you have to do business and management. You might do your research and you find that probably international management is something that aligns more with what you want to do. So that research is really important. Also, factor in I mean, additional points rather than just statistics on rankings, etc. So things like, what's the location of the university, what kind of alums have been there, what kind of faculty is there, do you prefer a city university or a campus-based university, how okay are you with the weather of the destination that you're choosing, because all of these are practical problems that exist. So with London, specifically, it's been rated the number one student city, I think, multiple times in the row now, thrice, if I'm not wrong. So that's for a reason, because it's such cosmopolitan. How welcome do you feel in that particular city? I've sometimes heard students having that particular problem in the US, right? So we understand how welcoming the city should be. So all of these are practical things, so be mindful of that. Also, I tell students, if you're looking at UK and you're applying through UCAS, your five choices are there. You have to be very, very mindful as to how you choose those five choices, right? So if you, and I, every student pretty much that I speak to has a dream college to go to. That's absolutely okay if you have that structure in your head, but it's also very important to be aspirational as well as realistic, right? So those five choices have to be in a way that probably two are aspirational, next two are realistic. One is also buffer, because we've seen such uncertain times recently, and then a lot of students had this issue when the board marks were compiled without examination, then they did not meet their expectation, etc. So all of those choices have to be very mindful. So that's important. For UK, I would say pretty much all universities give value to personal statement. It's just not like an additional document that's asked to just please the university. It's really important for it to be a very thought through personal statement. Also, in the personal statement, there are, I mean, a lot of points to share, but the bigger picture here is that the personal statement should reflect your motivation, attitude, and determination, enthusiasm to study that subject. So that's really important. And don't please the university by saying how great the university is in a personal statement and waste your characters, because we know how great we are, honestly, but what we want to know is how you are a correct fit, and is it your informed decision, right? So all of these factors come in important while you're drafting a personal statement. So that's really important. I'm not even counting how many I've listed, but I think pretty much the last one would be, so everybody's excited about the post-study work visa, etc. But I always tell students that's a great opportunity, but if you want to avail it to the maximum, then you have to start road mapping it, right? So if you will graduate this year, then what kind of additional societies, clubs are you joining to reach to your career? So that visa is there as a legality, but you have to be out there, attend guest lectures, networking is a big thing in the UK, and Indian students are not really used to, this kind of environment. But I have seen a lot of King students ending up into their dream jobs just because they were part of a society that had probably a guest lecture, and they networked and they've landed into great opportunities and jobs. So networking is a big thing. If you are choosing a foreign destination, then you have to pretty much be clear in your head that you have to get out of your comfort zone. If you have to go there and you expect to be spoon fed, then don't go, don't waste that money, don't waste those years, I would say. And Namita correctly pointed, nobody will ask you there, like, if specifically with Indian schools, they monitor and police you with attendance. And UK universities, or pretty much abroad universities, they don't, and it's not about, I mean, because Indian students come from a very fairly different perspective, that's why they expect that, but that's not the case. You have to be out there and use those opportunities. I mean, King's alone has about 300 plus student societies, so they are different subject societies, Harry Potter, film, Bollywood, 70s plus sports clubs. So you have to be mindful of joining those, balancing, etc., but avail of those opportunities. Last, I would say, location is really important, irrespective of whatever continent you're choosing. So King's is very, very centrally located, which is why, and King's has not one but 5 campuses. So pretty much the whole of London is your classroom, only provided if you want to make it. So, a lot of our students, probably English literature students, in their breaks go to museums and galleries which are just next door. Now you have a choice there to either go out and explore or sit inside and, probably chat with your group of friends. So you have to balance it out there and avail of those opportunities. So I think I've crossed way more than 5, but yeah, I'll just stop there.
I think those points were very handy. Starting early is definitely important. So thank you. I think this will really help our potential applicants. So great. Thank you, Namita and Palak. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you,
so much.
Bhavna, for hosting us. Thank you.
Yeah,
for
thank you,
attending.
Bhavna. That was great. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us on a Friday evening.